Where's the, is the share? There we go. Okay, so this is the new link to this new stream. You should see the whole stream. End stream, so we are live. Can you join and let me know if you can see the full Zoom screen? I should be switched back. Sorry? Yeah, so now you can see the whole screen. There should be a couple of seconds delay. Yeah. Oh yeah, so what we're actually gonna have is this, you know? Might take a few seconds to see it, but on Zoom you should be able to see me and you. Can you see both me and you right now? Oh, I can hear myself back. What just happened? Oh. Okay. Okay. So okay, yeah. So this is I think this is good. I think this is good. It's not full screen. What do you see? Oh, yeah, I can't control that. That's just how Zoom works. I think if we do speaker view, no, that's just gonna show you. It's not gonna show me. You know? Yeah, but it's not switching to me right now. You know, so it should be switching to me right now. Do you know how to do that or not do that? Which part? Unpin video? Yeah, I know, but that's okay. It doesn't hurt that much, yani. So الحين I don't have anything pinned right now, but I think we'll just stick with this. I think this is fine. You know, with the black background and everything. Yeah. So I think we'll do this, yani. Yeah, this is it. This is what I have right now. Yeah, yeah, okay. I would like to test this with someone who's not us, just to see this. I think, let me send a message to... Okay. Yeah, what's wrong? But I'm concerned about the audio, you know? How can you verify the audio on your side somehow? Because like I'd like to confirm that they can hear you. So can you say something? Yeah, but can they hear you? That's also my concern. And they can hear me because I'm the one streaming, so that sounds less of an issue. Zoom. Yeah, that's what I noticed. Okay, okay. I know which part this is. Okay. This is this is OBS. This is OBS. Yeah, okay.
What's the issue?
The audio output part is it's not connected. It can't connect with my headset. Too.
Set. Yes. Testing. Hello. 1, 2, 3.
It's not do input active.
Testing. Hello. Yeah, it's
There's no devices in here, so I'm not sure how to do this. What's that sound?
maybe it's the echo.
Devices in here, so I'm not sure. What's that sound? Yeah, it's going back and forth. See how I can. Sorry, let me see how I can. Yeah. Yeah. The YouTube stream? No. Well, okay, I don't think I can mute it because it's already live. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. The Are you talking about the audio mixer in the middle of the screen or far left? Yeah, yeah. There's no mute button. You're talking about the YouTube Studio streaming page, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Yeah, it's the OBS screen window. It's what the audience sees. Yeah, I have it open right now. No, it's not capturing the audio output. Well, the issue is that what I hear, the audience can't hear, which is what you say, you know? Okay, let me just go on Google. think there are 3 people viewing our stream right now. Or it says concurrent viewers. I don't know if that means people watching or what does that mean exactly. Oh. Mm-hmm. Where did you send that? Oh, let me check that out. Yes. Before actually, let me try one thing before I do that. Can you say something? No. Can you say something? Interesting. No, that's the interesting part. Can you say something again? No. Yeah, I'm making good progress here. Okay. Can you say something? Sorry, a moment. Can you say something now?
Hello. Testing 1, 2, 3. What's happening?
The output levels in Zoom is not registering. That's the interesting part.
What does that even mean?
It means I think the problem is here, not in OBS or in YouTube.
Did you check out the tutorial I sent you?
Yeah, it's the tutorial that got me here. Okay, let me check another angle out. OBS, audio output capture, device not showing. Okay, so there's a big step here, which is the device input capture in OBS. It shows the headset device I have, but for the audio output capture, it doesn't show the headset as a device. So I think if I actually pick it as a device for audio output capture, it's going to fix the issue. I tried that, but that doesn't work. It's not showing it for audio output anyways. But let me yeah, no, it's not showing anyways. God, are you kidding me? What? Really? There's someone in the stream right now? Oh, really? Can you guys hear Haidar right now? Please let us know if you can. Because if you can, we got this going. We can just start right now. Okay. So this is the last issue that we're trying to resolve right now. It's just that you guys can I don't know. I don't think I changed any settings in a long time. I'm sorry, guys. I would love it if this worked as much as you did, really. Right now?
Can you hear me right now? Can you hear both of us?
He's talking right now. Can you guys hear him? Not in OBS. Okay. Well, there's a big delay here between what you're seeing and what I did. So you guys can hear him right now?
Besman says yes. Hey, yeah.
So, can you see us both? Okay, there's a bit of a delay here. Let me just
You're
thank you,
switching now to
Basma, and
Zoom,
thank you,
right?
Leila. This is such a relief. Good. Okay, let's do this.
And you should be able to see us as well. Okay, I'm going to share the link to this thing on Twitter. Just give me a second.
Sure.
You might want to share it on your account as well, I'm sorry.
All right.
Fine folk, just give us half a minute. We'll just announce. I love the new feature of the quote tweet because you can see who has referenced the tweet.
Interesting. Okay. I just tweeted about it one more time. And
Okay.
gonna share it with one last person who I left hanging. And then we're good to go.
I'm gonna add a screenshot.
Okay. Shared it with everyone I was sharing it with, and ready to get started.
Excellent. So before we begin, we have to mention the fact that we underthought, although like our topic is overthinking, but we underthought the planning for this session. Our apologies for that. We didn't know there was going to be a difference between streaming with a webcam versus streaming with Zoom. So that was the big mix-up. Okay, so Shari, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, but before I do that too, a couple of stuff to note. So yes, just as Haider just said, we underthought this. It's not a problem. This is the first time we do this. No big deal. Apologies for the hour delay, and there's a delay between what we're doing here and now and what you guys will see. And so when you guys send your messages and ask your questions, it'll take us some time after you send it until we can see it and respond. Okay, so
the best we've reached in terms of like time travel. A 5 second delay, which feels really weird because like the like whatever I'm seeing on the stream is actually 5 seconds ago or something like that.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So let's get this conversation started on overthinking. Okay. So, okay. Let me just. I think it's usually a good start if we start off with you sharing what you think overthinking means and what you think it means to other people when they talk about it.
Okay. When it comes to overthinking, if you know Monk, but he's a detective with OCD. So his OCD, like the attention he gives to the details, causes him like a lot of angst, a lot of like his obsessive thinking doesn't allow him to feel free in his interaction with others and the way he lives his life. But at the same time, it makes him a great detective. So one of the like running lines in the show is that it's a blessing and a curse. And overthinking or intelligence in general is both a blessing and a curse, because we can think about our lives and then we can overthink about our lives or the decisions we want to make. So I see it in that sense. It's a blessing to be able to think and plan, but then when we start obsessing about thinking and planning, it turns into a curse against us. So that's sort of my way of thinking about it. And what we mean by overthinking is that you're spending too much time in the thinking phase, not in the doing phase. And if you're taking into consideration more variables than you need to take, then you're actually complicating the planning stage, which prevents you from taking the necessary actions. So with any situation, with any decision we need to make, we have to identify what are the relevant variables and what sort of time frame or how much effort do we need to put into the planning before we actually transition to the doing.
Interesting. Yeah, it's clearly a balance of thinking and then acting on the results of your thinking. I kind of see it the same way myself, and usually, whenever I have like a word or a term, I try to understand. One of the techniques I use, I guess, is I try and break down the word itself and try to understand where it's coming from. So the word overthinking, well, it's over, and it's usually used to indicate too much, past the necessary point. So overthinking, and so you're thinking past the point where it's productive and useful. And so you're thinking, so it's productive thinking, but then after a certain point, it becomes overthinking, and it's just not helpful, not productive. It's usually really close, and people think overthinking is a sign of intelligence or something that intelligent people do, while not intelligent people, they don't do that. I can see where this is coming from. I can definitely understand how you might see things this way. Because you think if your brain is active means you're thinking. Well, if it's not active, you're not thinking. And smart people, the difference between intelligent and non-intelligence is the brain part.
But yeah, which is the challenge, because some people think of it in terms of planning, and then it seems rational to plan and consider your options before taking any decision. But then, so we kind of fool ourselves into thinking that, oh, I'm just planning, I'm being careful, I'm being wise in my approach instead of rushing into things. So the rationale behind it kind of encourages us to continue overthinking, because we trick ourselves into thinking this is the right thing to do, And I've seen it a lot with people, for example, when they want to start a business, they do a lot of planning, and they say to themselves, I'm just making sure I'm ready, or I'm trying to reduce the risk. But another really important point when it comes to overthinking or planning is the vantage point. So before you start a business, you're looking at starting a business from a specific vantage point. Mm-hmm. And usually, because you've not started, you've not experienced any part of starting a business, you're only thinking about starting the business, but it feels really intimidating. So you say to yourself, okay, I want to know enough before I actually start the business. But no matter how much you know, knowing will always feel different to doing. Taking a risk, like when you're just thinking, you've not actually taken a risk yet. There's nothing for you to lose. But when you go beyond that phase of just the planning and you actually start something, whatever it may be, like whatever your starting point is, maybe it could be launching an Instagram account or speaking to potential customers, like the actual steps that kind of put you out there, and you start testing the business idea, then you feel like, okay, there's a risk of my reputation. Like, what will people think of me if my business fails? Or you have to buy something, you have to pay for a logo, you have to pay for some sort of business service. You say to yourself, okay, what would happen if the business loses? But as you're transitioning towards the doing, the experience is different, and you have a much better vantage point than before starting. So some things, some pursuits, we really don't know before starting. We have to do something. We have to start somewhere to improve our vantage point. And I'll just give like a very recent example. I launched a few ebooks and I sold them as PDFs. This was the start of the year. I think it was in January or early Feb.
Okay.
But then I launched them as PDFs, and I didn't know how to launch ebooks on the Kindle store, and I kept putting it off because I said to myself, it's going to be too complicated. So I didn't even interact with the website to put my ebooks on the Kindle store. I just thought like I fooled myself into thinking that this is going to be complicated. So I kept putting it off. Then I said to myself, okay, I want my books on the Kindle store. I'll just start with one book and see what the process is like. So when I started, I realized like everything that I had a question about, like how do I format for the Mobi format for the Kindle? How do I price it? What's the pricing model? These kinds of things. Whatever questions I had, going through the process actually allowed me to clarify everything that I needed. And without going through that process, trying to come up with a solution before you engage with whatever activity you want to do, whether it's writing a book, starting a business, learning any skill, if you try to figure everything out before doing it, then you end up, it's actually like, I don't think it works that way.
It doesn't, yeah.
The pursuit is destined to fail because you're trying to achieve a level of certainty from a vantage point that doesn't provide that certainty. So starting with something, anything, improves your vantage point, and then you'll be able to engage with whatever activity you want to engage in.
Yeah, definitely. So I can see the underlying theme here is that, and like I want to put a different spin on what you said. So, like I want to start off by kind of clarifying. There's like two different kinds of knowing something. There's a knowing you can get from reading a book, which is reading about someone else's experience. But there's a kind of knowing where it's like you only get it from your direct experience. And there's something about that feels more real than the knowledge you get from a book. And overthinking is when you try to, well, it's overthinking is usually, if not always, kind of surrounded around like a thing in real life, some activity, some task, some job, and there's almost always the element of fear in that task or job. So overthinking is when you try to get the kind of knowledge you can read from books or articles or podcasts, and you try and get as much of that as possible in order to make the fear go away.
Yeah, so it's the difference between theoretical knowledge and experiential knowledge.
Yeah.
Like when you actually go through it on your own, it feels different, and you start to notice a lot of details you would otherwise have missed just reading about it, you know?
Yeah. So
okay.
So a lot of kind of the motivation behind overthinking is that you want to do it right. And again, I usually kind of bring this back to emotions and usually back to fear. You want to try and so the first time you try and read about something that you try to do, you feel a lot better about it. You feel like you can do this more effectively because you know more. So you try and read and kind of consume more and more content, and you are always getting a little bit closer. You are always a little bit less afraid, which is where the trap kind of sits in. But the reality of it is you kind of have to balance that with courage or some kind of virtue, depending on the situation. So, some kind of virtue that's less about intelligence and intellectual thought, and more about taking action and moving forward in the face of uncertainty. Um, so with that courage, you kind of take the first step, and with that first step, you see a lot of new things, and you get that experiential knowledge, and data and exposure and experience itself, and that has a much larger effect on reducing your fear of this activity or thing than knowing more or reading more about that task, you know?
Yes. It actually reminded me of a conversation I had with Besmer earlier on today, because I tweeted about being smart, and I said being smart is not just about knowledge, there are other factors to it. So Besmer pointed out that applying what you know is also one dimension of like intelligence, because there are so many people that get stuck inside their heads, like they start to navigate mental space, but they don't really know how to apply what they know and how to manifest the ideas that they have into reality. So let's say I want to write a book. I might have some really good ideas. I know how to organize my thinking, but do I know how to actually manage my work so that I can have a book cover designed, so I can think about the publishing, think about the promoting, and actually doing it. The implementation is a different skill, and usually intelligent people, because they feel more comfortable with ideas and navigating mental space, and they enjoy it. So there's a joy of learning itself and reading, going through online courses, that kind of thing. We become maybe reluctant to actually implement and apply what we know. So then that becomes like a pitfall, because you get sucked into the learning and what Leila mentioned, analysis paralysis. So because you're planning so much, you get like, you kind of freeze when it comes to taking action, because you try to plan beyond what's actually required.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just go back to the point that Leila mentioned in terms of starting a business?
Yeah.
So I think it's extremely natural for people to experience analysis paralysis when they're starting something big. And starting a business can be considered a big, major commitment, because it's not something you just like casually begin and then it takes care of itself. There's a lot of attention that needs to be paid to it. That you need to go through maybe several iterations. A business has lots of moving parts, so you have the idea itself, like trying to understand the problem you're trying to solve, and then what kind of solution you're looking to build, what kind of branding you're going to have, and then operations in terms of hiring. There are so many parts to starting a business, but so it is natural to kind of freeze when it comes to building a business. The way I like to think of it is to focus on the most fundamental thing to the business, which is a solution to a problem that people are facing, or an experience you want people to have, an experience you want people to have and they want to have. So it's very important from the potential customer's point of view. They actually are drawn to the thing that you're building. It could be a fashion item or a fashion accessory. If the accessory already exists out there, you might still want to contribute to the joy customers are going to experience as a result of the product that you want to provide. It may not be considered a pain, it's not really a problem, but you're actually creating some sort of value that people are willing to pay for. So that's the most fundamental thing. And then instead of worrying too much about operations, branding, and so on, you take it one step at a time, especially to confirm that there is interest in what you're building. So maybe you want to launch an Instagram account before you actually establish a business. Are people asking questions questions about the products. Are they willing to pay? Do they ask questions? Do they say the price is too high, the price is too low? Despite people saying the price is too high, are people actually paying? Because sometimes you don't need to target everyone. Some people will always complain about price. So you don't need to market to those people. And even if you reduce the price, like, they won't be interested. So you focus on the people who are willing to pay at a price point that makes sense to you. But there will always be something specific you can focus on without having to feel like you need to do everything at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was just a point I had to mention about starting a business.
Well, the common theme is that, well, I'm seeing myself two common themes. The first is you want to try and simplify the thing you're overthinking about. If it's starting a business, you want to simplify that and just like make it like, don't think about every single detail there can possibly be in a business, whether it's operations, finances, organization, the culture of the organization. Don't think about all of that. Think about just the core thing you're giving to other people, and give that to them. Don't think about anything else. If everything else goes wrong, that's okay. Find the thing that if it goes well, then you're good to go. Then that's okay, and let everything else kind of fall to the sides. The other thing is that.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So the other theme that I'm seeing, this is like a different scenario where I might overthink, where it feels like I can't simplify it. I can't make it smaller. It's like it is what it is, and I can't get my hands around it. And this usually happens in social scenarios or emotional scenarios usually. And in those cases, the thing that makes me kind of get stuck in the thinking world is that there's actually nothing I can do about this thing that I'm thinking about, this thing I'm trying to figure out and understand. It's actually beyond my control. There's actually nothing I can do about it. I just don't like it, and I'm trying to change it. There's a question of, should I change it? Am I allowed to change it? Is that in my rights? Is it mine to change? But the thing that puts me in this overthinking trap is I'm trying to change something that's actually outside of my control. Like in terms of starting a business, there's a million factors at play here, and you can't control all of it. You can control a small fraction of it, and not to mention that you haven't even started yet. So the only thing you can control from this vantage point is basically your first step, and that's all you can do. And like there's very little you can actually control. So when you're trying to change something you can't control, the only thing you can do about it, because you can't control it, is think about it, is try to understand or break it down. But that's kind of where you could get stuck in overthinking mode, because again, that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah, actually, this reminded me of a couple of ideas. One I read about recently in an interview between Tim Ferriss and Brad Feld. So Tim Ferriss has a very popular podcast, and Brad Feld is the founder of Techstars, which is a startup accelerator. So Brad Feld made a distinction between systems that don't require too many variables, complicated systems, so systems that require lots of variables, maybe a very stringent, very specific process to get the results you want, but the process is predictable. So once you figure out how to do it, you're able to repeat the results that you want. That's complicated process. So for example, maybe getting bread making just right. There are so many ways you can screw up making bread. So it can be considered kind of complicated. Okay, but when you know the variables at play, you can easily say, okay, the crust is too crispy because I added too much oil. Like, you know where you went wrong. But he also makes a distinction between complicated and complex system. And the complex system is where there are lots of variables, but even knowing the variables, there are certain variables beyond your control. So it's not like a predictive or deterministic system. And the example that he gives is with startup communities, because when it comes to communities, we kind of know what helps in building a community, but there are certain things that are outside your control. So, for example, having a success story within the community might encourage more investors to come. But you can't really anticipate when you're going to get a success story, you know? So there are certain systems that you may not understand, and then trying to figure out everything in a deterministic way, like you're thinking, I want this specific outcome, what do I need to get it? But if it's a complex system, you can't really predict what the outcome will be, you know?
Okay.
So that goes back to the point about having variables outside your control. The other thing is that you reminded me of the model that Stephen Covey uses in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he says that you have a circle of concern and a circle of influence. So you can have lots of concerns, but the things that you can't really change, you shouldn't spend too much time worrying about them, because you can be concerned about them. And when the time arises, you may want to do something about them. But if you think only about what you're concerned about and not what you actually have influence over, then you always feel like you're not able to achieve the changes that you want to achieve. But focusing on what you can influence, so your business might not, your business succeeding might be outside your control, because there are certain factors beyond your control. And Corona has proven this. There are factors beyond your control. But if saying to yourself, I want to give it my best, I want to maybe think of it as a learning opportunity, and you want to see how much you can learn about business. Or you say to yourself, I want to impact as many lives as I can. Let me see what kind of result or what kind of impact I can have. This, if you're focusing on the effort and on your learning, it's something that you can actually control. So that falls into your circle of influence, which is within your circle, your broader circle of concern. I think we talked about this before, right?
We probably have. We covered a lot of ground already. But I feel like this is true for other people, because I see it a lot on myself, where it's like the circle of influence is the smaller one, and outside of that is the circle of concern. So you're concerned about more things than you have influence over. What I do, I've noticed myself doing it, and I feel like a lot of people do this too, assuming, I don't know, but I feel like they do, is I tend to dismiss what's in my circle of influence, not give it a lot of attention, and instead I confuse my circle of concern to be my circle of influence. I tend to think that what's in what I'm concerned about, or what's like the stuff that I can see, that are actually outside my circle of influence, I tend to assume that I have influence over that, when actually I don't. And there's
Yes.
conditioning that sets this in my head, of course. But you were gonna?
But I think there are two main reasons for this. One, whatever we feel is within our circle of influence, we feel like it's not influential enough. So, for example, going back to the conversation we had about Jordan Peterson and how he says like tidy up your own room before trying to change the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes like we underestimate the value in tidying up our room. Like, what possible influence will that have on the world? This is something insignificant. I shouldn't give too much attention to it. But if you do focus on the things that you can change, and like whether it's habits, whether it's like just knowing that there are certain things you have complete control over them. Like how you treat other people, how you respond to the way you're being treated, the habits that you give attention to, these kinds of things, they will make you feel more confident in your capacity to be influential. And actually, taking care of yourself, we mentioned this in the conversation about self-care. Like, taking care of yourself will increase your influence. So we shouldn't belittle that opportunity to have that we have in increasing our influence. The other thing, I do think some people use the circle of concern as a cop-out to avoid doing the things they can do. So if you worry about what's happening in other countries and you can't do anything about them, it makes you feel good about yourself, and like, I'm being so moral and so good, mashallah alayh, such a good friend. But it means you're not doing anything. So, like, sometimes you have to be honest with yourself in the sense of, am I worrying too much about things that won't impact my life, but I just use it as an opportunity, like as a way of pretending I am doing something. It's like, I noticed this with business, when people read so much about Apple and Google and Facebook, and the example is so different to what they're experiencing. Like, and but they think of it as research. Like, I'm researching how to run a business, but because it's so different, it may not be research. It may be actually like a way of procrastinating.
So I want to make a comment on Leila Cactus's comment. So, okay, so she mentioned something really interesting, and I want to put a different spin on it, as I usually do. She said, what's been helping me is to not be so emotionally invested and tie the business's success, or lack thereof, to my self-worth, and be content with mediocrity. She continued with, also just do the thing, which requires a lot of encouragement from others, like family. I try to utilize that high from encouragement and take action when not my usual overthinking self. There's a million things in that. I want to try to unpack it and try to explain it. I've had that exact experience and perspective a lot of times in my life, and it took me a long time of reflecting on it to try and unpack it and understand what's really happening. The part that says not be so emotionally invested and tie the business's success, or lack thereof, to my sense of to my self-worth, that's detachment. That's letting go of attachment. That's the same Buddhist idea or spiritual idea in general that talks about attachment, is that she was attached to the business's success, and then she said that what's been helping her is to detach from that. Attachment is emotional. It's just emotional. And then she continues with, and be content with mediocrity. That mediocrity, if I understand what she's thinking of with that well enough, it's not mediocrity. It's something the world has told her is mediocrity, but it's just herself. And I'm assuming, based on the general theme of the message, that she feels that the success of the business would give her more worth in the eyes of other people. And that's contentment with mediocrity, is contentment with herself. That's not mediocrity. That's part of the mistake. And then she continued with, also just do the thing, which requires a lot of encouragement from others. I try to utilize that high from encouragement. That high, she used the word high because the word being high is a temporary state. It will go away soon. I think, and psychoanalytically speaking, sorry to psychoanalyze Leila, but I don't know her personally. That high is the detachment and the courage. But it's not just the courage. It's the courage with the detachment, but there's something else there. It's not just the courage. It's the sense of, I guess, curiosity. So once you let go of the attachment of the success of the business and you get some encouragement, you also your natural curiosity starts to come out and start to think, what else can I do? Can I do this? Can I do that? And you start to wonder. I start to wonder about what else could happen. You start to your explorative mind starts to come out. And take action when not my usual overthinking self. Your usual overthinking self, I put this in quote, that's an important statement. It's not, I mean, I don't want to, I was going to say it's not your actual self, but I don't want to get into the topic of self. But that usual overthinking self, it's usually a conditioning. So I just wanted to add that last part because at saying that it's not entirely your fault that you're overthinking. That's not how it goes. It's conditioning, it's circumstantial, and a lot of other factors at play. I just realized that I'm getting the feeling that we've kind of steered away from the topic of overthinking just a little bit, but I think it's been a good conversation anyways.
Yeah, but actually that's the advantage of having a live stream, because we're responding to what people actually have in mind.
Good point.
Like the point that Leila mentioned are worth discussing. I actually want to go back to what Leila had mentioned, like a couple of things that she mentioned. I think the idea of mediocrity comes from perfectionism. So when you feel like the quality of the work that you're doing doesn't meet the threshold you've set for yourself, then it feels mediocre. It's not to the quality that you want. So to overcome perfectionism, you have to kind of settle or accept mediocrity. But the way I see it is, especially when it comes to things that we're just learning and we're trying to get good at, we can't have a really high threshold. It's like telling a child, I'm going to teach you how to walk like a toddler, but you can't fall. Okay? So that intimidation, like setting such a high threshold, will discourage even trying. So you have to give yourself, cut yourself some slack so you can actually fall and then get back up. Do something that you're not happy with and then fix it. And I've seen this in so many things, and I think, Shari, you've seen it as well, for example, with writing code. If you say to yourself, every line of code I'm going to write is going to be perfect, you're not going to write code. So you have to say, okay, I'm going to write something that works, and then I'll see if I can optimize or improve the way it's written. I can design something. Let me design a logo. The first thing is not the last version. The first version is a draft that you can improve on, but at least you have something to improve on. And again, going back to the point I mentioned about vantage point. If you have nothing to look at, it's really hard to come up with a design. But design is usually iterative. So come up with a few logo designs and then say to yourself what you like and don't like about these designs. And then maybe you can scrap them completely and then work on something new, or you build on what you currently have. But to expect perfectionism from the very beginning, it actually cripples our growth. We can have it as a standard in terms of something we want to pursue, like in the next, let's say 6 months, I'll be at X level of proficiency in whatever skill or the level of business that I'm developing. But giving ourselves that capacity or the ramp up to the level that we want allows us to grow. But being critical of ourselves from the very beginning, it's actually going to prevent us from growing. So that's one point I wanted to mention. The other point about responding to the encouragement of others, I've really found two things useful. The book, The Power of Now, it actually helped me better understand what ego means and how to detach myself from my ego. And the ego is basically our perception of ourselves based on what we think of ourselves and based on what we think others think about us. So other people's perception starts to develop our perception of ourselves. If somebody thinks that we're not doing enough or we're not successful, we begin to see ourselves from the eyes of others, from their point of view. And then that can be discouraging. So you kind of want reassurance from other people that you're actually good, you're okay, like you're successful, you're great, like those reassurances. But like when you understand the ego, you don't really need to improve the ego. You need to detach from the idea that you are what people think you are. So having that freedom to say whatever ways I behaved previously does not define who I can be, and you think of yourself as on a continuous journey of learning, improving, and growing. You actually don't get stuck within the ego of other people's perception, and then you no longer like other people's encouragement is a bonus, but you actually have the confidence in yourself that's dependent on your honest look at what you've accomplished and what you can accomplish, how you can grow, how you can learn, rather than what people say about you. So the power of now, I found it really beneficial. And also Stoic philosophy. And Stoic philosophy like makes a strong distinction between reality and then our personal expectations and what other people think. And being able to navigate the world making those distinctions. And I think this does like relate back to the idea of overthinking, because sometimes the ideas we're struggling with are like abstractions that have nothing to do with reality. We're just juggling ideas in our heads that we don't need to actually think about or take into consideration. So making the distinction between what is true, what people think, and what I think or what my expectations are, I'm able to say, for example, if I'm worried about starting a business, I say to myself, this is my personal perception. It's not reality. Let me engage with reality to actually see if my business is going to succeed or not. Making those distinctions, I think, is really important.
So while I kind of felt like we went all over the place, this made me realize that all of this is actually really directly related to overthinking, and I want to explain why here. So I think if you guys know me personally, I don't know who you are individually, but if you know me personally, or actually if you've seen my YouTube videos, it's the same thing. You know that I reflect a lot, and I've gotten familiar with the different, let's say, beasts that lie in our psyche. Some of them are kind of direct, like a fear of confrontation. Thank you. So the fear of confrontation, it's something like direct, like I'm afraid of confrontation, so you can train yourself in therapy, let's say, or just in your own privacy, that when you come to a position where it's time to confront someone about something, you can confront them and then you can just take the next step. So there are things like that are kind of concrete. Like a fear of confrontation is straightforward. You confront someone when it's time to confront someone, and if you don't, then you've succumbed to the fear. You can practice and come back again next time. And there's a point where that's kind of done, right? There's a point where you've overcome your fear of confrontation. But with overthinking, I've noticed that in my life, it never goes away, but it always gets less and less over time because of various factors. Sorry. Okay, I'm using my phone as a Wi-Fi, and I just got a notification that says low battery. But it's not that low. We can continue for some time until it's low enough to charge it. Anyways, so overthinking kind of gets reduced over time, but it never actually goes away because it's like a meta beast. It's a beast that lives and feeds off of other beasts, and there's no point in life where you have no beasts in your psyche. If there's like a smallest little beast, then the overthinking monster can feed off of that and can survive a bit longer. So all the things that we talked about, they they weaken the overthinking beast. The book, The Power of Now, is amazing. It's an amazing, amazing book. It's the first book I've ever completed. I completed it as an audio book. It's the first book I ever really completed in my life. It's a great book. It started a chapter in my life, so I very strongly recommend it. I was gonna say something else about overthinking. Sorry. Oh, wait, the last stuff you talked about related to the power of now, Stoic philosophy. What else was there?
No, I think just power of now and Stoic philosophy. And in Stoic philosophy, I talked about the difference between our expectations and what other people think and reality.
Yeah, expectation. That's the other monster. So expectation, and I was thinking of expectation and play, and I was thinking how I did not overthink this stream session, because to me this is play. This is not a job. No one's expecting a certain standard or certain, not standard, a certain outcome. But having set certain outcome, then your fear of failing to meet those expectations can kind of push you into overthinking, because you cannot ever accept not meeting those expectations. And so that, I don't know exactly how, but that somehow puts us kind of into a trap of overthinking. Not sure how, but it usually does. And yes, the last gem that I had in mind was acceptance. So, we all, I think everyone I've ever talked to in my life agrees that failure is okay. That it's good to fail. It's good to allow yourself to fail, because that's how you learn and grow, right? It's bad to aim for perfection, but everybody does that anyways still, right? And when I fail, most of the time I don't get a sense of acceptance and encouragement from most people. I get the opposite, that it's shameful to fail, even though they come out the next day and say the opposite, but that's still the usual reaction, right? So
yeah,
again,
that's very true. Yeah,
that's always been something that really puzzled me, and I was always worried I was overthinking it, but I wasn't. So I kind of ended up realizing how I did the same thing myself, is that when I encourage people to allow themselves the possibility of failing, and then I respond with a certain sense of shame towards them, not realizing it at the moment, but eventually I look back and realize how unhelpful my response was. I reflect on why I did that, what drove me, and I realized that I kind of accept failure of my future self and my past self, or the opposite, but I don't accept failure of my current self. I never accept how it feels to fail in the moment. I never accept feeling bad about myself and feeling like I'm not as good as other people. So because I don't accept how that feels, I don't accept that reality here and now. I kind of accept it as an idea, but I don't accept it here and now. I never allow myself to presently be in a inferior position to someone else. I never allow myself to be less than other people in the present moment. And so because I don't allow it in the present moment, even though I allow it in idea, fantasy world, I don't allow it in the present moment, then I never kind of accept potential failure. I never accept, potential failure. So when the prospect of maybe failing to meet a certain expectation or whatever the job is, the objective is, I don't allow room for failure. That's where the perfectionism kind of steps in, because I don't allow anything to ever possibly go wrong. So I try and get every single thing perfect, because I can't accept having failed. And again, that's not something I would say is anyone's fault, really. It's a conditioning that we all go through, and just as I said, I contribute to that conditioning onto other people without realizing it. It's just how how we are for some reason, but that's just how we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple of things based on what you shared. The first point, I think we tend to overlook the role that emotions play in our lives, which is why we're great at giving other people advice and suck at following our own advice. And the reason for that is when we think of a situation in the abstract, like the example of a failure, for example, like we know theoretically that failure is natural when it comes to learning, or it's better to have tried and failed than not to have tried at all. So, thinking wise, we can sort of identify which is the preferred option, but emotionally, we struggle to accept failure. It really sucks. Like when you experience failure, it sucks. It's painful. So coping with the emotions would prevent us from thinking in the right way. But as you were talking, I thought about something. I think, and this also relates to the idea of overthinking. Sometimes we want to address issues intellectually, or we try to figure out the roots of the thinking that leads up to it, when that's not always a useful exercise. So instead of thinking about why do I feel this way, what is the thinking underlying that feeling, maybe we can think about specifically how do I feel, and then what outcome do I want, what can I do, or how can I change the way I feel in order to achieve that outcome. Because when you dig too deep into certain issues, sometimes you're left with, I lack confidence. You lack confidence. Then what? You don't want to end up with ideas that don't actually lead to the outcome that you want. And no matter what, emotions are going to play the biggest role in your decision making. Rationally, you set a direction, but the drive that takes you to the direction you want will always be through emotion. There was this study on a person who lost their sense of emotion, and they weren't able to make decisions. Like you say, Thai food or pizza. I know a lot of people who have this, by the way. But I mean, there was a study in that someone had zero emotion. They weren't able to make decisions. So decisions do depend on emotions, but instead of grappling too much with the ideas, you can think about it. And this is to overcome overthinking. In order to actually make a decision, you say to yourself, how do I feel? How do I want to feel? What's the outcome that I want? And then you prioritize making a decision and taking action over the analysis and exploring the underlying thinking or the roots of actually trying to figure everything out just for you to make a decision.
Yeah, I can see how that let's say technique would simplify things a lot and would really limit overthinking. Absolutely.
There's actually a book called the 5 second rule, and it's basically when you decide on something, you say, "Khalas, count down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm doing it." You're not gonna think about and analyze your decision, because when you know that it's the right thing to do, you don't want to hold yourself back from by overthinking it. Khalas, the outcome is clear. You're just the timer has begun. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Khalas, you're doing it.
Yeah, that's really great. I've been using it mostly to the experience when I wake up to when I get out of bed. That's the whole journey. That's a whole adventure right there. So there's a lot of overthinking. There's a mess in there. But simplifying that to just the 5 second rule, which is just start counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then get out of bed. That just ends the whole conflict, the whole mess, the whole thinking, the whole strategizing, all of that. It limits all of that, so that when you start counting, you commit yourself that by the time you reach 0, you're gonna do the thing, and you're gonna take this next step, and then this whole struggle of overthinking or being a perfectionist or trying to get it right, that kind of goes away, and you get past that. It's really great.
I wanted to comment on something Basma mentioned, which is about high expectations. There's a chart about flow, the experience of flow, and how it's related. So there are two variables that influence the way we can engage with the task. And the two factors are your level of skill or competence and the level of challenge. So if you have low skill level, if you have, regardless, if your skill is low or high and the challenge is low, you're gonna have either experience apathy or boredom. Yani this challenge level is so low, you don't want to engage with it. But if your skill level is low and your challenge level is high, you get to experience anxiety because it's something you feel you're not capable of doing, but the challenge is extremely high. So you experience anxiety. Flow is actually when we have high competence and the challenge is high. So we feel engaged because the challenge and the competence match, and we're like, it's still a struggle, but we feel confident enough to be able to overcome it. And that's when you experience flow. Like if you think that you can't write anything and you want to write an article, you experience anxiety. If you think you're good at writing an article and you're like, for let's say a local publication, you might feel, okay, I'm confident, and then you get to experience flow. But if you say, I'm writing for like a top level publication and you have no experience doing that, the anxiety might be higher. So going back to the point that Best mentioned about like high expectations, what can we do to reduce our expectations? Like how can we make a challenge not feel like a real challenge? And one thing I found really useful is to think of everything I do as an experiment, and I just want to see what the outcome is like. It's not, with an experiment, you detach from the actual outcome. Like whatever result you get is the result of the experiment itself. So you don't grow attached to the outcome. There might be like a favorable outcome, and then you try to sort of tweak the variables to get the result you want. But at the end of the day, it's whatever you do has a certain outcome, and then you treat it as an experiment that you're conducting, which helps you better understand the way the world functions, what your personal preferences are, what you're good at, and so on. So it's always like ways of better understanding yourself and better ways to understand the world.
Yeah. Yeah, so
and your expectations, like just to tie it to what Vespa mentioned.
Yeah, so one thing I think would help kind of lower your expectations is to accept failure. So when you accept failure, allow failure to happen, not kind of actually to make yourself fail, but to accept the potential possibility of failure as a reality of your experience. Then you don't have such extremely high expectations of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a nice book called The Now Habit, and it talks specifically about this, like the anxiety we get to experience when the stakes are high. And he gives, this is the sort of thought experiment that he shares. He says, if you have a plank of wood on the floor and you just have to cross the plank and just walk from one end to the other, how intimidated would you feel? Okay? There's no intimidation. There's no risk in actually walking from one side to the next. But he says, if we raise that same plank and you're doing the exact same exercise, let's raise it 10 feet. How would you feel then? So even though it's the same activity, the sort of outcome or the risk we attach to that activity changes the way we feel about it and then impacts the way we actually perform. So his recommendation is reduce that anxiety, and he gives several exercises on how to reduce the anxiety. Meditation helps a lot, like in terms of calming yourself so you don't feel you're always wrestling with negative emotions when you're trying to deal with whatever task you want to deal with. One thing, strangely, I found useful, I read it from an article and it worked really well for me, which is if you're putting off responding to emails, it may be because you feel guilty for not responding on time. You know how sometimes you feel like I have to start off this email with like 3 paragraphs of apology and explaining your life situation. But the article said, forgive yourself. It's not about them forgiving you. You forgive yourself so you can move on with the task. And this has really helped me. Like whatever task I feel like I've been putting off and I'm experiencing guilt as a result, I just say, sorry me, but I'm just gonna move on with it.
Interesting.
And it's all about like dealing with our emotions.
Yeah. So I just want to add a comment to the plank example you gave. So the plank is on the ground floor or just on the ground.
On the floor, yeah.
And yeah, on the floor. The downside of failure is you trip, I guess, and fall on the floor, right? It's no big deal. If you fail while the plank is high, you die, and so your acceptance of failure kind of goes away. If the plank is high, you don't accept failure at all. Your expectations are very high. You have to get it perfectly right, or else you die. So you do not tolerate failure in that scenario. But when the plank is on the ground, failure is not a big deal. So you allow yourself to relax. You just allow yourself to kind of go on autopilot. So you can see things from that perspective also. Interesting.
When there's no risk, you might tolerate more failure, or what Leila mentioned, like mediocrity. Is that what you mean?
Wait,
like,
can you repeat the question, Martanya?
And when there's no risk, like when the plank is on the floor, there's nothing for you to really lose. So maybe your standards go like lower as well. Like you kind of tolerate failure, you tolerate mediocrity, which can backfire. Is that what you mean?
No, so you tolerate failure, and so your expectations are not as high, and so you kind of allow the risk for failure to happen.
Yeah.
So that's when you become a perfectionist and try to cover every single corner of possibilities and try to get it exactly right.
Yes, and I do think it's important to have standards when it comes to quality and like your level of performance, but it shouldn't cause you anxiety to the point that it's like it reduces your level of performance.
Yeah.
So like come at it from a place of peace and accepting yourself, rather than say if I screwed up, khalas, this is like end of my life. I remember like I had a student, she was gonna get, I think instead of 100%, she was gonna get like 99.5, something like this. And then the loss in grade was so ridiculous. She was like a star student, and then when she said, like, I told her, you made this mistake and I'm deducting like I think that's half a mark. She's like, والله أستاذ شنو تخرب مستقبلي, like you're gonna mess up my future. I'm like, what? This 0.5 is gonna mess up your future?
Wow.
But some people, like that, the level of perfection that they're seeking is not tied to actual success in the real world. They feel like if I screw this thing up, خلاص يعني, this is the end of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that.
Maybe close off with asking questions. Like if our viewers have any questions, something we didn't address.
Yes, so I think we'll dial down now. So if you guys have any questions, I'm just laughing at the girl story. If you guys have any questions to bring this back to overthinking, if there's something important we haven't covered, we'll address them and then we'll end the stream.
We have like a 5-second delay.
Yeah.
We have to wait.
It's okay. Yeah, but this has been fun. This has been a great experience. I really like this engagement with the audience.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's been fun. I think the stream has gone on for about an hour, give or take, and
it's actually an hour and a half when we started testing the stream.
Well, if you don't count that,
yeah, it's an hour.
Students who dance with
cool. Basma, I have the same experience.
Yeah.
Like some students shoot for the minimum, and like when they get it, it's like celebration. Okay, so thank you very much, Mshari, for hosting this. So thank you for all the people who attended and listened. Thank you especially to Leila and Basma for your participation. And we'll catch you at another discussion. Sorry, just another thing. If people have any suggestions on what topics they want us to discuss, we're more than happy to accept these suggestions.
Yeah, I'm gonna write my Twitter handle here on the chat. So this is my Twitter handle. You guys can find me there. Tweet me suggestions, ideas, anything you'd like us to talk about, explore more. Yeah, this has been great. Now I just noticed I like how the title of the stream actually says test in between brackets because it was actually a test. Well, thank you guys too for your engagement throughout this whole time. And yeah, it's been great having you guys around. It's kind of expanded the discussion into just an interesting place. It's been great. Thank you, Haider. Thank you, Haider, also for your part in this, your engagement in this, and your patience with me at the beginning. It's been great. I'm really looking forward to doing this again. Really.
Inshallah. Best of luck. See you.
You too.
Take care.
Bye. And goodbye, everyone. I'll see you guys sometime soon. Oh. Boosting mind and how to control anger. How to control anger, that's a very interesting one. I don't feel, yeah, what do you mean by the first one? But I don't feel I'm qualified to talk about controlling anger. So that discussion will not be me kind of telling you, giving you answers. It will be an exploration on my side. But yeah, definitely, it sounds like a great topic. Okay, there's a big delay, so by the time you guys hear what I said, I'm gonna have closed the session, the stream. So again, thank you for joining and your engagement, and I'm gonna end the stream. I'll see you guys sometime soon, inshallah.